So hey anime fans. The series name is What If Naruto Harem was Sailor Moon. So let's start the series. In the center of the Sea of Serenity stood the Kingdom of the Moon, also called Silver Millennium. A series of queens headed its monarchy, which was composed of a kingdom of people whose right to existence was derived from divine right. The idea of purification, which many believed to be righteous, actually had a more complex connotation. It was an absolute solution to issues, and those with a greater conscience or knowledge realized that any form of absolution, no matter how it was achieved, was wicked. The Silver Millennium was now controlled by yet another Queen Serenity, descended from a long line of Queen Serenities, and the monarch of the Moon Kingdom reclined by her pool, watching the endless stream of stars that filled the night. The once bright woman was beginning to show the symptoms of aging that the long-lived people of the moon would not notice for decades. Even in her 50s, 60s, and later years, most people would still let her look young because her silver hair was still vivid and she retained some of the delicate features that gave her pale figure an ethereal glow. She was left to her thoughts on lonely nights like this one. She was considering the responsibilities she was expected to carry out, similar to those of her mother and her mother before her, such as continuing the traditions of dressing upscale or selecting a good partner through a fighting competition. Because they were aware of the repercussions of turning against the Silver Millennium, many other kingdoms often remained silent. The beautiful and technologically sophisticated kingdom possessed ferocious soldiers with vulnerabilities that could be exploited, much as the kingdom's fortifications. The queen of each century, of course, rarely followed other people's advice. Tradition remained intact, the setting was flawless, and the Silver Millennium was perfectly crafted, or the years went on as before. Ninja Protector! Out of curiosity, she sent forth her ninja protector to explore this possible enemy or ally who had invaded her territory. She was full of thoughts on her way to the garden. The Silver Millennium was difficult for many kingdoms to capture, and many would-be invaders were wary of the 9-planet kingdom of elemental warriors, which was made up of ninja protectors and their princesses who were raised to be the guardians of every generation of serenity. The others often formed an army under the direction of the planet guardians, with the exception of the planet Pluto, whose inhabitants were tied to time and the underworld, where god Kronos reigned as the ruler of time. Out of curiosity, she and a guard passed the broken pieces of earth, and the sounds of combat echoed through the ground. In order to protect their monarch from the impending threats, the ninja protector moved in front of her. A blonde male with vulpine-like features and another with silver hair that, if it were darker, could nearly have been that of a moon citizen emerged from behind a number of the crystalline trees. Both were bruised and covered in blood. The silver-haired man's left leg and right arm had pieces of flesh and skin torn off, and portions of his bone were visible. In an unidentified language, they appeared to be yelling at one another. Then, as black fire erupted from his eye, the man let out a cry. The male screamed something as he phased through the black flames, and the only word the queen could comprehend was chaos. He repeated the words and thrust a bright sphere of some kind into the silver-haired man's chest, shooting him into the rift that swiftly closed when the man fell through. The man uttered a word as he fell forward dazed. "My queen! You must not! He might be dangerous!" Ignoring her ninja protector, the queen went over to see how the man was doing. Despite his numerous wounds and breathing, he had whiskers and a humanistic appearance, more akin to an earthling than a millennium inhabitant. He might be a demon. Then the word chaos came up. Could he be a scheming member of chaos? If so, he might have knowledge. Setting him up for questioning was the best course of action. Erect a medical tent and bring our top physicians. She was concerned since the abnormality that was found in the alien energy was even different than the Dark Kingdoms. If the man was one of Chaos's goons, she didn't trust him enough to take him to the palace. One of the ninja protectors gave their assessment in less than an hour, and although the humanoid nervous system was different from anything they had ever seen, it was dynamic and housed the genomes of multiple creatures. While they carried on with their investigations, Serenity gave the order to restrain the male in their strongest holding cell. Wearing a miniskirt and various lavish crimson embellishments, a tall, raven-haired woman suggested, "My queen, this male is a danger, and we should exterminate him while he is weak. He is a curiosity, Mars. He might know something about our enemies. If he is revealed to be nothing more than a foot soldier, we will get rid of him, but not before?" "Yes, my queen," the raven-haired woman said. After a day, Serenity learned that the man was conscious. She was shocked to find him seated in a cell with all the ropes and restraints completely taken off. To her alarm, the scientist stated that they seemed to disappear from the man's energies when she asked how this occurred. She stood outside the cell and began to speak to him. "How do you feel right now?" she asked, trying to convey her meaning with her tone of voice and sign language. Few societies were telepaths by nature without the usage of dark forces or a special power. His telepathic response, "As well as any prisoner can," took her by surprise. "I don't know your language and I have to speak with you some way, correct?" he replied. "That's right. Who are you?" "You can call me Queen Serenity." "I'm Naruto. Might this be the Moon Kingdom?" "For what purpose did you come seeking said kingdom?" "My friend told me that I would discover something fascinating in that kingdom, so I guess I didn't arrive at the wrong time." "I regret to inform you that you come at one of the worst possible moments. Tomorrow, I have an appointment with my partner to generate an heir." "I take it that this is an arranged union or a fiancé?" "I have to admit that I don't know who he is since tradition says there will be a competition and the winner will be able to have my child." It seemed very barbaric. Most other scheduled sessions begin with a meeting between the couple and their family. "Can't you, the queen, alter it even if it's customary?" The statement reads, "That I cannot do," adding, "The rules of the past are clear. The present will only be governed and maintained in a stable manner by lawful activities. Why replace them now when they have been functional for thousands of years?" "My friend told me that the defenses of this place were poor and the practices of cleansing are comparable to lawful evil and blinded light. That kind of thinking keeps one killed," Naruto thought to himself. "Where are you originally from?" "I am from many places, though my prime origin is a world called the Elemental Nations in a village called Hyde Ninja Village. It's in many dimensions away," Naruto said, confident that the Moon Kingdom would not threaten the Elemental Nations because they would have to pass a long line of other strong realms before they could even approach it. "You are definitely an outsider to this solar system, as I don't think I've ever heard of such a place." "Yes," Naruto replied, closing his eyes and taking a deep breath. A new arm sprouted where his old one was, with a strangled cry and a burst of core energy. "What are you?" Queen Serenity felt a little nauseous and her heart nearly exploded from her chest. "A shinobi. I learned your language from your memories and thoughts," he added in her mother tongue. "You arrogant beast, how dare you pervert my mind?" She frowned angrily, destroying her lovely face. "I'll disregard your remarks because I did something that was pretty ungentlemanly. I guess my anxiety got the better of me," the blonde said, making arm circles with his new arm. "You make it sound like I went through your most private thoughts. I'm a little anxious about the tournament, huh?" "I believed you said you didn't read my innermost thoughts. Even though I think the whole thing is weird, I didn't have to because I could tell you were anxious just by looking at your features. Whoever is the strongest will be your suitor. What happens if your person is awful or as dim-witted as a brick? In terms of influence, that doesn't seem like a very good exchange for a child to potentially acquire good genes. What happens if he is not a good father or husband? All serenities have retained our silver roots and appearances. I merely need to see the man for one night and one night only. Beyond their duty is done. This is the day I've been waiting for my entire life," she said with conviction, despite the fact that her body language suggested otherwise. "I understand how you feel, even though you may make yourself sound certain." No one had tried anything even remotely like her, so she felt violated when Nuda nonchalantly claimed to have read her mind. "You don't even know me," she responded, trying to amend her conduct and reprimanding herself for her outburst, which was totally inappropriate. "There isn't any fear if the male is just for what you say," you stated. "And to answer that was on your mind, this chaos, I'm not associated with that force. You seemed worried about what I thought. Please lead me to the exit. More or less, you just seem lonely. I can see it in your eyes. I understand loneliness." Serenity thought. "I have another idea. Join the tournament, and if you win, you'll gain freedom." "What happens if I lose?" "I haven't thought about it. But I'm sure I can think of something." Nuda moved to within inches of Serenity and asked, "Are you sure you want to do this? Do you know what would happen if I won?" With a teasing smile, he asked as Serenity shuddered. If she didn't think he was beautiful, she would be lying. Many of the males she encountered were either effeminate or ugly, or too loud or prim and formal to provoke a response from her. But this man was different. He radiated assurance and confidence, and there was a look in his eyes that said he was positive he could win this competition. Additionally, he didn't care that she was the monarch of the Moon Kingdom. Instead, he saw her as a woman rather than Queen Serenity. He was intriguing, a riddle. "Only if you succeed." She had encouraged her people to reconsider, but on the day of the competition, she allowed Nurdu to compete. And if the child wasn't lying, she had nothing to lose from her vantage point high in the stadium, watching the battle, a big if. Rumors began to spread that the enigmatic blonde was actually a Yuma in disguise because such physical feats were uncommon. The spectators was terrified by Nuda's movements, which only left a flash of yellow behind, and his extraordinary flexibility, which allowed him to overcome his opponent without the need of a weapon or magic. It didn't help that he was effortlessly defeating every elite fighter in the Moon Kingdom, with the exception of the Senshi. A portion of the audience lost their minds as the semifinals arrived. The champions from every kingdom were being destroyed by this unanticipated wild card. Then Nuda was faced by a man called Solaris, Prince of Earth. "I will not be fooled by your gimmicks. I, Solaris of Earth, shall defeat you here." The man pointed his blade at Nuda and said, "Kagebunshin, there's no spirit art. 5 Ndos arrived." "This is what kind of magic?" the man persisted. The prince sliced through the doppelgangers with his blade, and the blonde disappeared from sight, but Nuda said nothing as the clones rushed for him. "You coward, hurry up! I'll strike you with my blade if you fight me." Nuda reacted by jumping out of the ground. With a strong uppercut punch, he sent the prince flying, landing with a gazelle's graze. The yelling and screaming of the middle-class to lower-class fans filled the stadium when the prince struck the ground. The upper classes and aristocrats grumbled and exchanged derisive glances. To believe that an unidentified individual might defeat monarchy. When things didn't go as planned, the queen tried to keep her shock under check. She had heard that the Prince of Earth was a ferocious warrior, and that marrying an Earthling would just be a little step in bringing Earth into the alliance. Her heiress, who is of Earthian descent, would be in charge of that. When the prince attempted to charge Nurdu, who had his back to him, he spun and broke the sword with strength and speed unknown to the moon troops. Then, he defeated the man from that direction with the Shane glow orb, sending the prince flying till he hit the wall. She was shocked out of her reverie by the astonishment and cries of the audience. The ninja defenders showed up and scooped up each loser's body, just like in every match. The cries of magic and cheating eventually died down, and the last match was prepared to begin. The male may have made it this far, but he will never be able to defeat the captain of the Royal Guard, Mars assuredly stated. Yes, Jacobin is very strong and hardworking, but the boy has already defeated the majority of this generation's best fighters. My queen, do you truly think that no one will prevail? That's unacceptable to me. There's a stranger who can touch you but is unsuitable to be in your presence. The queen smiled as the final battle began. It seemed that the mysterious man was playing tricks on his rivals and that he would have a powerful daughter. With an arrogant expression, he gestured to the queen. Since it wouldn't be appropriate to show favoritism, she waved back out of impulse but quickly stopped herself to avoid being seen doing so for too long. Naruto repeatedly dodged on the defense as the guard captain pulled out his sword and launched an attack. Even though it appears that you are no longer conserving energy, it's still interesting that you are fighting while trying to use as little energy as possible in your attacks. I can't let you win since you seem to be having more fun than taking this seriously. I should add, an outsider who mocks our traditions won't take my queen's chastity. These words I place my honor on, Naruto stated, drawing out a kunai and intercepting the hit. You seem to care about your queen, but that doesn't make me evil. I have a mission of my own, so to speak. If I lose, I'll tell you, but if I win, you won't tell anyone what I just said. I don't hold anything from my queen. It wouldn't be lying, so to speak, if she asked what I said. You can tell her it's nothing much, because I didn't say my mission had anything to do with the Moon Kingdom, and I'm doing nothing much right now. That gives me even more motivation to win, Jacobin remarked as he pushed forward at an incredible speed, his saber moving like lightning as the conventional ninja protectorman's borrowed garments were peppered with several cuts. I see you have some moves, but because my daughter will become queen and our realm will grow to include the Silver Millennium, winning this tournament will only help us achieve our objectives. Naruto reached into his pocket and took a taste of a bottle of toad oil. The guard was startled by this abrupt change in the blonde's fighting technique, so Naruto fired 3 flame bullets at them. Katan flame bullet technique, and while the guard captain was bounced back, his armor stopped the majority of the damage. Dotan, Retsudo Tense Show! With his Slinus close at hand, the royal guard leaped into the air, outside the technique, and ran for an overturned fragment of earth. In an attempt to terminate the fight, he fell towards Naruto and aimed for a downward slash. The ground began to spin inward around the man. 2. Futon de Tapa, the guard captain said, and his saber was flung apart as the earth beneath him was torn up and the man was blown backward by the sudden gust of wind. I understand why you're the captain of the guard, Naruto said, flitting between the man and his blade. I'll stop now because I'm bored, but you never give up. 3. Suiro knows spirit art. He created a prison of water out of the moisture in the air, confining the guard captain inside the large sphere, and then he utilized blood manipulation to slowly empty the captain guard of air until the man fainted. His victory over the Prince of Earth and the captain of the Royal Guard was all that mattered to the crowd, who were going crazy for the winner regardless of the fact that he didn't represent any of the Moon Alliance's countries. When the queen heard the screams, she shuddered. Not everything is ruined, but what if he wishes to be involved in the child's life? Queen Serenity, Mars said with sadness. You don't have to do this, there are other ways. Just because your mother, grandmother, and great-mother had done it this way, it doesn't mean, what I mean to say is. In response, the queen said, I know, Mars, and she stood up gravely. She said, but this is how it should be. And they both stopped talking. Have I demonstrated to the kingdom that I have selected the strongest? Mars clenched her teeth and said, but my queen, that thing is a monster. Do you not sense it? Yes, Mars said wearily. You have shown the kingdom that the future heir would be of strong blood by choosing him. Mars, please, the smiling white-haired woman responded. The woman breathed into herself and let her abilities caress her. That man is just that, a simple man, she muttered. It's about time the ceremony starts, she remarked as she gently let go of her wings and absorbed more energy. As the queen's true form appeared, Mars looked in awe. People of the Silver Moon Kingdom, she exclaimed in a loud, regal voice. She stopped to catch everyone's attention while encircled by enormous crystal butterfly wings. I give you, she declared, pointing the cameras at the competition winner, Naruto, the solar system's strongest warrior, while all the planets in her solar system watched. She grinned and said, What do you think of this? As the crowd stood up and applauded him. Did you always have this plan? With a satisfied smile, Naruto turned to her and appeared out of nowhere, rising from the earth to her platform. When she saw him standing beside her, looking as fresh as the day she was born, the crowd went berserk. He took her hand and shook it, and the queen did the same out of habit. They accepted him, and despite their lack of knowledge about him, they shook my hand as if we were equals. What have I done? I guess I win, she mumbled as she cast a cold glance at the smiling blonde. I'll let you get ready for tonight, he said as he left, causing a knot to form in the pit of her stomach. Naruto felt the tension in the air as he walked into the queen's room, which was about the size of a small house, and he noticed that some things seemed out of place, like vases missing from pedestals. The queen was sitting on the bed in her see-through gown, her long silver-white hair flowing, her pink lips, and her huge fairy wings. The queen's apprehensive look hollowed out his body as Naruto approached her carefully. She tightened when he touched her shoulder. The tension was thick and poisonous, like a fog creeping down from the bank, and he could see the sudden intake of breath. It was also a cold night, unlike the usual steamy ones he had had on a number of his journeys. Will you be speaking? In a flat, uninteresting voice, Serenity stated bluntly. Let's get this over with. If I were that man from Earth, do you think you would have acted in this manner? Some queen, since a woman's first experience is meant to be unique. When the normally calm queen heard those words, she became angry. She knew he was calling for a fight, but she was powerless to avoid falling into his trap. She stood up and walked forward, allowing the natural brightness of the crystal moon, which glistened like crystal in a tunnel, to shine on her eyes. When he saw the virgin beauty in her eyes, he briefly forgot about the conflict. You're not allowed to say that. The queens before me are probably rolling over in their graves. Let's get this disgrace over with, she yelled. Such a beast of a man should be honored to touch me, let alone bear a child with me. He placed 2 fingers beneath her chin, then pressed his lips to hers. He put his other hand lightly on her back. His voice was almost a voiceover. You're right, let's end this useless tension between us, he said softly. She had never experienced a man touching her in this manner before, and goosebumps appeared all over her body. She cursed herself in her head for letting a man's touch ruin her usually calm manner. In an attempt to push him away, she lightly pressed against his chest, but instead her tiny fingers caught fabric from his loose shirt and pulled him in. It would be preferable if this could be finished sooner. Fury succumbed to lust as the two kissed nonstop, feeding off each other's feelings like a dream eater in a dream. She tried desperately to find the will to calm her body from these sensations, but she failed miserably as their hot kiss grew in passion. His tongue moved gently over her closed lips, waiting patiently for entrance. He seized the opportunity as soon as she relaxed and slid his tongue hotly into her mouth. She jolted out of her reverie when her back hit something hard. She knew right away that he had her pinned against the wall, his powerful bulk enclosing her while he kissed her. His lips bit at the sensitive flesh of her neck, and she let out a loud gasp. When Naruto realized she wouldn't dispute the attention he was giving her, he gripped her forcefully beneath her thighs, lifted her up, and positioned himself between her legs, causing her to gasp softly. He grinned to himself when he felt her tightly squeeze him in the middle, running her hands through his blonde hair and allowing him to continue sucking her neck despite the shame and hatred that were building inside of him. "Please carry me to the bed so I won't be pressed up against the wall." Despite his snort, Naruto obeyed the order. He walked over to the bed and laid her down while slowly removing her gown. Then, with the moonlight shining on his body as well, he undressed her and surveyed her shape, reaching down to the bottom of the shirt and lifting it up and over his head. His body was formed in a way that only a seasoned fighter could have acquired from years of training and combat, and Serenity couldn't help but stare at his bare torso. The scars and burns that had previously been visible when he first arrived had completely disappeared. She looked up at him and saw that he was looking down at her with a concerned expression on his face. It must have been a lie since the expression was too human to be connected to a monster like him. He lowered himself just enough to give her a soft kiss. "You are aware that I still loathe you, right?" she whispered as she ran her fingers through his hair, letting her nails touch his scalp. "I know," he murmured, smiling sweetly at her without adding anything else. "We must remove the unrated version from our own archive." Serenity was relieved to get pregnant after 3 weeks, but she wasn't sure how much longer she could put up with being limp and sore. Now that she had what she wanted, she was attempting to explain that his support was no longer required. Although he was resourceful and powerful, Naruto had little to no fondness for the politics or aristocracy of the Moon Kingdom. Additionally, there was the suspicion that he might be a dangerous enemy spy because he frequently succeeded in fight, either against the guard or the inner senshi themselves. He typically outlasted his opponent physically and employed strikes to limit their capacity to use magic. For weeks, Naruto would disappear and only reappear to give the queen and the senshi headaches and to make sure his children were okay. They didn't even notice him during his entire stay there. But then again, the majority of the dark creatures in this dimension that didn't have human-like characteristics were either slaves or mindless berserkers. "My daughter," he said as Serenity had their kid examined from the womb. Hearing the girl's condition and that she was healthy gave Naruto relief. It is true that he had committed terrible and unforgivable things in the name of his family, but they had good reasons, and when he was called upon them, he never tried to act superior to those who had committed similar crimes because he knew his goals were far more noble. At the drop of a hat, he would do whatever it took to protect his beloved people, even if it meant becoming closer to a monster. "I can't, I won't, I will," he thought fiercely as he considered the Moon People's mindset. It was all a dream, and the people knew very little about struggle and fighting. This utopia was merely a mirror that would shatter under enough pressure, and their attitude toward those who weren't up to par was disgusting. How did Serenity put it? That the evil of this dimension were purified. "How much longer will you stay hidden in the shadows?" Sailor Pluto asked Naruto as he exited the palace and glanced at the skies after getting a replica of the original 5th headmaster's gem many years prior. The woman emerged from the shadows, taller than most of the women he had met, with a light tan skin that gleamed in the moonlight and eyes that burned brighter still. Her figure was magnificent and mature, with large hips and a bust that was larger than average, and her curvaceous form contrasted with the queen's taut and slender form. She wore the same sailor uniforms as the other senshi, but hers were dark green to match her long hair, and she carried a large scepter with her. "Are you still worried about whether I pose a threat to the Moon Kingdom? Rest assured that I have a child with the queen, the future matriarch, so there is no reason to assume that I pose a threat to the kingdom." "That remains to be seen. You may not be an intentional enemy, but," she murmured, trailing off as Naruto gave her a questioning look. "However, nobody has ever been as rebellious as you. Your strength, your reasons, and your aims are all a mystery to me." "And that's bothering you?" I can see that any future in which you are involved is cloaked in uncertainty. I know you know more about me than you're letting on, so why don't you go to the Queen? As a prophet of time, you should have realized that there are several ways to change the future. Most people forget that changing the past is necessary to change the future. Even now, I can tell that the Moon Kingdom and Senshi will fail because they are far too weak. Your military tactics primarily rely on certain magics and young women who can launch elemental attacks but hardly understand actual combat. As the one who ninja protector the portal of space and time, I have a limited form of omniscience, but even without my power, I can see that those who stand against you perish. Holding his palm as his fingernails turned into claws, Naruto stated, "Just remember one thing, Pluto, if you cross me, I will annihilate you. You risk becoming like your deceitful father Kronos if you don't carefully consider who you want to be loyal to." Despite my deep loyalty to the Moon Kingdom, my attachment to Lady Chaos remains constant. I would sooner break the laws of time than disagree with one of her lines as she set my family's place from the start of their line. Good, remember that when the time comes and you may someday be asked to break both the laws and fight against the traditions of the moon, Naruto stated with a smile as he hurried out. Since that was the planet from where she had originated, Naruto had met another scout, Mercury, the brains of the 4 Girl Scouts as he called them, and he got along with her the best of the 4. "The Queen would like to see you. This place, this false dream, an entire civilization that can afford to live in crystal and eat the finest food when they don't need to do so, why are all those in countless worlds, in countless dimensions suffering when people are living so luxurious?" The girl in blue said, speaking in a kind and reserved manner as usual. Naruto nodded and began to follow her, but as he did so, he couldn't help but stare at her backside, which was undoubtedly one of the best he had ever seen. "I get so nauseous from it." They went into the royal parlor, where the Queen and the other 3 Senshi were waiting. The Queen remarked, as if firing a servant, "It appears that every problem related to the birth has been settled. For the sake of the child, I ask that you leave this palace so," she added, dismissing the whole thing as a simple commercial transaction. "You are no longer needed to stay here as your services have come to an end." "Are you concerned that your ideal matriarchal society may be destroyed by a man? Can't the next queen be influenced by a strong male figure? I'm afraid I can't support it. I can't let my daughter grow up to be some big-eyed, stupid idol." "Uzumaki, don't be arrogant. I could have you killed at any time. Your guardians are pathetic, and your soldiers are feeble. Sit there, Queen, as I crush the best that your kingdom has to offer," Naruto said, with a somewhat cruel smirk. He went on to prepare for war, and the Senshi also established fighting positions, prepared to perform their tasks. "I don't want to make the same mistake again by not giving Boruto and Himawari the attention they required in the beginning. I'll be present for this child and do more this time." The numerous ninja guards that were thrown at him forced him into the courtyard, and Naruto thought, "These girls are weak, far too weak." He sent them flying in a single gust of wind, and the blast was strong enough to send them crashing to the ground, but it was controlled enough that the distance and force were not fatal. "Mars Flame Sniper!" the sensei of fire yelled as Mars fashioned a fiery arrow and threw it at the blonde. "And unlike me, they can't afford to call out the name of their attacks," he thought as he turned his head out of the way of the blazing blow that slashed the top of his shoulder. The shinobi made 3 identical clones, thinking, "I'm close but no dice, let's see how well you girls work once you've been split up." The 4 Narutos repeated, "Catch me if you can, Senshi," as they each walked their own ways. "Gosh! Now what should we do? How can we determine which is genuine?" The lead Senshi then gave the following orders. "Ami, you follow the clone that went toward the medical center. Mars, you follow the one that went toward the sanctuary. Jupiter, you go after the one in the garden, and I'll hunt down the one that went to the library." Jupiter cursed as Venus paused to consider a plan. "We came back here after we defeated them because his clones aren't very strong. We'll reassemble there if the person who hasn't returned in 30 minutes has come across the actual Naruto. Venus, is that wise? Mercury asked. Isn't someone that can be easily maintained or fought? Mercury remarked. Mercury, we have little choice but to fulfill our sworn obligation to defend the Queen and this kingdom, even if it means losing our lives. Between the time he built the cage buncheon and his arrival at the library, Naruto summoned several hawks and wolves to keep the Moon Army intact, and maybe the total humiliation and defeat at the hands of one man would make them reevaluate their strategy. Crescent beam! So, I get you first? But when the stream of light swooshed past him and burnt one of the walls, Naruto twisted his upper body backwards and said, I think you better than anyone should know just how tough I am. If you give up, the Queen might allow you to survive. And abandon my child? I don't think so. He continued, adopting a combative stance. Then I have no choice, she said as power began to radiate from her. But before she could transform and call forth her power, Naruto teleported behind her, stabbing her spine with 2 fingers before she could react. Venus's scream echoed throughout the library as her form fell to the ground, immobile and refusing to obey her orders. What did you do to me? She inquired. I stopped your body's ability to move for a moment, he said, stroking Venus's cheek as her face contorted in hate. It's a risky procedure for someone who doesn't know anything about medicine. I couldn't just let you transform, could I? It should wear off in a little while, and don't worry, your spine isn't affected. It ruins your beauty, so you should avoid making faces like that, he remarked. It's not finished, she began. The others will. But was interrupted by cold laughter. V-chan, I'll fall just as easily as you. He grasped her chin and bent forward to put his lips to hers, whispering. Venus thought. What's happening to me? What's this feeling? What is he doing to me? As a fire burned inside her body and her head became a blur. You filthy man, get your hands off her! Naruto grinned and interrupted the kiss as he dodged another blazing bullet. So Mars is the second to encounter me, he muttered. I'll end you, like I should have done ages ago. Bird strike by Mars fire. A large bird that was easily compared to a phoenix took the shape of a fire as it appeared. After Naruto stabbed one of his nails into his palm and rubbed his blood over a seal in his arm, a staff appeared from a puff of smoke, and he spun it several times while chanting as a crest appeared beneath his feet, and as the bird struck, balls of fire swirled around him, and the attack imploded as the fireballs subsided. Mars exclaimed, What? As Naruto slowly walked up to her. Not possible. You ought to have died from that. With his wounds slowly healing and a few droplets of blood on the ground, he said, I can cast the spell faster than you can attack thanks to a little trick I picked up during my travels. Then I'll just exile you, she cried as she reached for the banishing parchments, but Naruto suddenly materialized beside her, snatching her arm. Let me go! Please don't touch me, she strained against his grasp and wailed. Marsh responded, I'm sorry, but you shouldn't tell the person you're trying to kill how you're going to kill them. And she was rendered nearly unconscious by a few quick strikes to the body. How did you change my physique? That's 2 out of 4 now, so wouldn't it be prudent of me to share all of my secrets with you? I swear I'll kill you. To be honest, I'm kind of disappointed, the blonde replied, shaking his head and sighing as a lightning strike smashed outside. You females need to train harder if you're going to defend anyone. I didn't imagine a replica of me would have the audacity to employ the ancient 1,000 years of death. Oh well, he thought as his lightning gathered and crackled in his fingers. Sweet dreams, Mars, he thought. The slight shock rendered her asleep. Queen Serenity could only frown when the doors to her throne room were thrust wide and the bruised bodies of Jupiter and the captain of her army were thrown inside. Their bodies were more red than they actually were. You ought to have gone. If you don't stop this right away, I'll have to kill you. Do you not comprehend that? She was unable to display a single thought while she yelled, taking care not to display any signs of fear, regret, or wrath. Do you think so? When he chuckled darkly, he thought, "Oh, that's adorable." Then he saw that she was holding a scepter. "Are you going to attempt to seal me?" he said. "Hit me right in the heart." Closing his eyes and waiting for 10, 20, and 30 seconds before someone collided with his chest. He opened his eyes and looked at the ground. "Yeah, those never really work, trust me. I always break free. Your purification is fit for demons. That won't work on me, so go ahead, try," he said, reaching out his arms. "Did you just throw a fucking tiara at me?" The queen frowned as he inquired. "Perhaps there is some truth to what you say." "Something? Don't get me started on my non-shinobi abilities. What Yuma in this universe can do half of what I just listed," he said, cocking his head. "I can use the darn elements, create copies, conjure creatures, and create illusions." "Have you ever been told that you are a walking mystery?" she asked. "I wonder why people keep saying that, because I hear it almost as often. They're going to enjoy killing me much more than they should." Sardonically, "I think I understand why," the queen thought. "Anyway, I think we can work this out as grown-ups. You should stop trying to prevent me from seeing my child, and I'll stop hitting you." "This child is not yours," she whispered as she abruptly bent down and gripped her belly. "She cannot be tarnished by your actions since she will be the next queen." He leaned down and placed a hand on the queen's tummy as she screamed in pain, murmuring, "Oh, looks like she's kicking." A green glow erupted from her palm, and the anguish abruptly stopped. "What did my youngster get up to?" She let out an angry yell. "Our," he reiterated, "daughter needed to be calmed down. You can't kill me, especially if you want to make sure she's raised right," he said as he took the woman's wedding gown and made his way to her bedroom. "My DNA isn't the same as it was the last time I've had children. I've been alive for quite a while, and there's no telling how much it has changed from what it once was. And there's the whole thing about the dangers you'll have during the mother's birth. So I think it's best for everyone if I stay around so nothing unexpected happens, you know," he continued. "You knew I'll kill you. You planned this from the beginning," she whispered as she shuddered in his arms. "No, absolutely not. I hoped you would be sensible enough not to try to kill me." "So, what are you going to do, beast? Kill me after I give birth?" "Stop tempting me, Serenity, but I won't kill you even after you give birth, despite what you think," Gerda sighed. "I will never cross the line of taking a mother away from me if I can avoid it," he said without hesitation. "For the time being, I'll acknowledge your presence, but nothing endures forever, and I'll die before I let you destroy the legacy of my family." With Serenity stabilized, Nuda left the Silver Moon denizens to gather their pride. "You know, Mercury, it's kind of hard to tell if you're paying attention to me if you refuse to meet my eyes," Gerda said, finishing up the information he had been writing down. Ever since he had put Mercury in the illusions that evoked her inner desires, she had refused to look at the blonde directly. "I'm fine," she replied. She was without a doubt the most soft-spoken senshi. Her life and her duty were to the Moon Kingdom, and she could not allow her feelings to get in the way. Therefore, whenever Nerda made a romantic approach, she politely declined him because she was not cruel or mean, and since he was the father of Serenity's child, it would be deemed improper. She seized up when she felt his hands rest on her shoulders. His hands moved down her arms as he whispered, Now, no reason to be so stiff." His hot breath was searing her ear. As his fingers worked her arms, Mercury gasped and said, "Enuda-san." He placed his hands on her sides and said, "The queen is so cold, you know, she won't let me in, and when your partner is as cold and unresponsive as she is, it only tends to affect one's performance, and it gets quite lonely." "Didn't mean to scare you," he said, sultrily smiling as he went over the medical information Mercury had entered. This seems about accurate. I need to go check up on the Queen and see if she is suffering from any symptoms that a carrier of a hybrid baby usually has, he said, taking the water bottle out of his pocket and placing it on the table. Are you going to be all right here? He looked over the data and inquired, as Mercury gathered herself and nodded. When Nerda looked at her again, she leaned back in her chair and stated, I'll continue the tests from your blood samples. He responded to the wink by saying, Then I'll see you then, before leaving the room to check on the mother of his child. Her brilliant blue eyes gazed up at the person sitting next to her as a charming little voice said, And who is that famous father? He shrugged reluctantly and said, Bromifer, from what I've been told, it's named after a royal warrior. Daddy, please don't do that, she moaned. You're messing up my hair. As he laughed, her breathing quickened, her cheeks flushed, and those same eyes became angry. He asked, But don't you want hair like Daddy? As he proceeded to play tenderly with his cute little angel. Queen Serenity exclaimed, What are you two doing up at this time of night? As she emerged onto the balcony in her ethereal nightgown. Mom, we're looking at stars, the tiny child explained. Serenity, it's late. As the young girl's face fell, the mother remarked, You have to look your best because you're meeting your tutor for the first time tomorrow. The young girl rejoiced as Nerd added, Come on, Bunny. I'll tuck you in and tell you one of my awesome ninja stories, he said. As he often did when he wanted to taste her skin, Serenity gave Nerdu an unpleasant look when he entered her chamber, but she said nothing. It is way past the time Serenity should have been asleep half an hour ago, she murmured. When he added, She was anxious about tomorrow, and I wanted to get her mind off of it, the woman suddenly defended herself. You spoil her, she said. I give her love, was his response. Removed. After 2 more years, little Serenity was 6 years old, and it appeared that her mother's influence was starting to manifest. A blonde girl muttered, I specifically asked for red-tailed 4-winged herons, not red-tailed 2-winged herons, as she turned to face the person serving her the meal. Her cheeks flushed, her breathing quickened, and she slammed her hand across the dish, shattering it against the wall of the dining room. Are you trying to get me mad, servant? She asked. No, your majesty, said a frightened, nervous servant, clean and white in a butler's uniform, bending at the waist. The child said, I will correct this oversight at once, as he looked up from his slightly bowed attitude and hurried away. That was impolite, Serenity. Little Serenity tensed as she felt terror take over. I raised you better than that. I don't know what your mother has put in your head, but we do not treat people like that. I'm going to have to change your attitude. I think you need a spanking. Come here, she ordered. Unless he was upset or disappointed with her, her father never referred to her as Serenity. Little Serenity was paddled as she froze. She had heard about spanking, but she had never experienced it herself. It is safe to say that there was a sudden change in attitude after her father brought it up to a number of aristocrats as a means of reprimanding their misbehaving children. The girl's face was terrified, but Nerda was not to be deterred. I'm sorry, Daddy. I know I was rude, but do I really need a spanking? She pleaded softly. Nerda rushed to her and, lying across his lap, put his palm on her back with a loud crack when Usagi didn't approach him. I would never raise my hand against you in an inappropriate matter, Usagi-chan. I don't want to spank you, but I won't be raising a spoiled child. You need to learn that certain behaviors and attitudes have consequences, he stated. Usagi cried out, Whap! At the first lick of the hand covered in core energy. Whap! Whap! It was never easy to discipline kids for the first time, especially when you had to wait until they stopped being angry. Stop, Dad! I'm sorry! Whap! Whap! Whop! Whap! It felt him sick to have to correct his little princess, but he had seen the terrible outcomes of too many poorly disciplined kids. Oh, please, Papa, please! Usagi cried out. He ignored his daughter's protests and begs to stop because he needed to make his point, and he stopped because he thought she might have had enough. Usagi just lays limp on Nerda's lap and sobs, seemingly not realizing that the spanking is over. As she nodded, he added, I'm sorry, Usagi-chan, but it had to be. You'll be a good girl from now on. Are you still upset with me? Usagi begs, still in tears. The queen didn't speak for Nerda for weeks following, and because Mars was on a mission during that time, those 2 weeks were the best and most silent Nerda had in a long time. He didn't even register or respond to the queen's brief outburst, and charged that he was foolish for punishing her in this way. Feeling somewhat depressed, he pondered if the action would have the same effect, but it didn't. He wrapped Usagi in a loving embrace as if that was the answer to her query. The baby was so tired that he fell asleep soon. Nerdu was only spared because Queen Serenity refrained from eating him out. All he knew was that his daughter seemed to be in love with the nephew of that jackass from Earth. What was the name of the boy? Endim? Enadnim? Anyone who didn't agree with his decision to call the boy Darien may fuck it. After another 6 years, he was facing the rise of hormones in boys, something that all fathers have dreaded since the dawn of time. May I ask you a question? 12 years have passed, and I would have expected you to have taken action by now. You still haven't told me what you want to do, Nerda remarked, keeping his eyes fixed on the picture before him. The voice fell silent. I have my reasons. Because of your influence, she has developed into a lovely child, but Pluto paused to avoid going too far. A bit simple-minded, Nerda reluctantly concluded. At least Serenity cares about her education. Tradition, though, can be annoying when inflexible, could show more compassion, though, he said, shuddering at the prospect of her life without his influence. He loved his Usagi-chan to death, but even he had to admit the girl was rather easily distracted. I would never imagine you complimenting Queen Serenity, at least not without attempting to rile her, said Pluto with a smile. When the moment comes, what will you do? Pluto, who sat beside him and observed his daughter riding the mare, inquired. Why do you keep bringing up Pluto, her future self? I will defend her with my life no matter what, Nerda asked suspiciously. Are you withholding something from me? No, nothing right now. As you are aware, if I take a chance on looking into the future, I might end up altering the past. I am unable to affect time the way the mystics you encountered can. He remarked, caressing his scalp. He remarked nonchalantly. I guess you're a lousy guardian then. For the first time in a long time, Pluto lost her fury and shouted. Pardon me? Damn him, the sudden change in demeanor left her stunned. So I'll make even the Ice Queen, Pluto, stutter? His face was inches from hers as he sarcastically said. I wonder what else I could do. It wasn't an offer, he was just poking fun of her. Trying to get the Senshi to lose their cool was fun. You are a man who is. That is obviously shameless, isn't it? He laughed as he lost himself in her stare. As the clouds moved in the moonlight, he said, I understand that a lot, and walked over to her. They both began to move closer when Usagi yelled. Daddy! You see? With furious eyes, the princess walked up to them and asked, You didn't see, did you? Of course I did, Nerda answered, dedication shining in his eyes. I used clones, sweetie. Pluto couldn't help but feel envious since he never denied her his love and affection. Deep down, she had to repress the feeling. Await my mother's reaction. Will she see me break the course record? Pluto felt ashamed since she was the gatekeeper and had a duty that prevented her from feeling this way. My apologies, Senshi Pluto, the princess responded, blushing as soon as she recognized who it was. She then returned her focus to Naruto. Did he irritate you? Do you believe I ought to give him a rib cut? No, I was just conveying the message of an observation I wanted to convey to the queen, Pluto said, rolling his eyes. I bid you a good day, Senshi Pluto, she said, clearly realizing as she grew older how flirtatious her father was. The girl wasn't very smart, but she was also a little lazy and easily distracted. The Guardian of Time was seen as having at least as much power as the Moon Queen, so Pluto did not have to bow, but she did. The princess was confused when she bowed to Usagi because she had never done so before. I also bid you farewell, small lady, she remarked. The Time Guardian gave Naruto a quick pat on the shoulder before heading out. And a good day to you, Naruto. The outer Senshi have finally returned from their mission. Hopefully you'll play nice this time, he remarked. As he watched the green-haired marvel leave, Naruto mischievously shot out, no promises. His sole worry was that his daughter wouldn't get sucked into politics, and he would do everything in his ability to keep her safe from threats both inside and outside the Moon Kingdom. Every time Naruto relaxed and took a nap, he couldn't help but giggle since it reminded him of the day Neptune and Uranus were called to take care of him. Why the hell are my clothes wet? He asked himself as he rose up, feeling damp yet rejuvenated. He stretched and yawned. When he looked up, he saw a tall, marine-haired Senshi staring at him in shock. A short while later, Naruto had fought the inner Senshi, and the queen had not yet given up on murdering him. The Imperial world collapses. When he was abruptly buried in the ground, he was so confused that he coughed and choked as he cleaned himself off, and then he turned to face the other woman, who was as tall as Pluto and had short blonde hair, giving her a tomboyish image. How? You're what kind of monster? He inquired. He cheekily remarked. Well, one in the sack, of course. Speaking of which, I'm hungry, he said, turning away and completely ignoring the fact that the two women had tried to kill him. Naturally, they were so shocked that they didn't even think to launch a follow-up attack. Naruto stretched as he woke up from the memory. Serenity was having some sort of council meeting, and he was interested in attending, but he couldn't help but feel annoyed that he was speaking to a wall because every time he offered a plan to boost their military power, it was filed under consideration, which is a polite way of saying, fuck off. Why had she had to be so damn stubborn? There was no such thing as a perfect universe. Beauty wouldn't exist without the idea of the unsightly to define it. Any promises of a perfect utopia were always a lie, something that could be accomplished as long as there was free will. There would be arguments. This intricate dictatorship was doomed to fail, and ultimately, Naruto wasn't sure if the previous monarch's actions were a result of the Moon Kingdom's current enemies attempting to destroy them. Uranus began to deliver her testimony. Queen Beryl is gathering her forces from the demonic dimension and plans to use it to destroy the Moon Kingdom. We should take steps to fight them before they become too much of a threat. I am afraid we cannot prepare until Princess Serenity's birthday, said the king. We'll have to wait until then. I am sure our forces will hold out until after the ball. But Your Majesty, they might launch a surprise attack during this celebration, Neptune, the sailor, said. Please think again. As someone who has actually been in combat, I would listen, and attacking Princess Serenity on her 14th birthday at the Grand Moon Ball is the ideal time to attack. I've always wondered why some cultures insist on letting rulers of divine right, who lack military experience, decide their actions, the queen said slowly as she faced his gaze. A withering glare of venom that would have burned the flesh of a lesser man simply made the blonde make a mock-hurt gesture. Naruto always hated the pointlessness of some of these ceremonies. The only thing that was titillating was seeing some of the beauties dressed in their native fashions. Mercury's dress, which showed off her rear end quite well, was particularly titillating, Nuda thought. No, I think we will have my daughter's ball when I plan for it too, she said, dismissing everyone in the council. If you have any further inquiries, please address them to the Senshi. I leave you all, good day, she said, rising and leaving the hall behind her. Usagi exclaimed, Dad, pushing him until he turned away. Stop it, you're humiliating me, she grumbled. Why did her father have to be such a loud pervert? He could have at least attempted to hide the looks like some of the maids did. Hush now, Usagi-chan, he whispered, causing the girl to flush profusely. You are aware that your father is trying to find you a new aunt. Before the princess could respond, the audience started applauding, and Usagi flushed as she turned to see who had entered the stadium. The tall, self-assured knight in black armor had a feminine face, a graceful figure, dark hair, and a regal manner that was accentuated by the way he accepted the crowd's praise. Nerda grumbled. He's not that attractive. Watch as he dive bombs a gigantic kitsune. Prince Endymion, Jupiter murmured. Isn't he cute? Ignoring Nerdu, Jupiter turned to the watching teenager and said, But you know all about that, don't you, Han? The princess blushed and looked away from the brunette who was grinning. I was just watching the match, she said. And you call me a pervert? God, I hope you don't take after me in that aspect, Nerda said with a sly smile. You mean the match that hasn't begun? Father! The princess virtually cried. Really, it caught some of the other aristocrats in the audience's attention. People, there is nothing to see here. Just a dad teasing his daughter. A series of polite coughs, mostly to hide the laughter that was about to explode, followed Nerda's antics, which were a welcome change from the rigid politics and proper traditions that had been in place for years. The princess defended herself by saying, I'm just paying attention and doing the right thing. You risk losing your vision if you focus too much, Nerda added. He continued, glancing at Nerdu. I wouldn't advertise who you desire when a certain someone is around. Unaware that the prince was obviously superior to his opponent, and that most sword fighting is earthen, Serenity rolled her eyes and continued to watch the duel. Someone said, You know, the one fathered by. Is that the princess? Look at her hair. It's blonde. Shouldn't it be silver? She looks so human. Is she even able to fly? The child inherits her father's traits. Calm down, Serenity, don't let this bother you, Princess Serenity said, closing her eyes to filter out the words. You're too old to be upset about it. Noting that she was shorter than her mother and not nearly as serene, and that she did not have the characteristic silver hair and bleached pale complexion of her ancestors, they were talking about how she was different from the other moon dwellers. Because the moon race's genes were dominant, many thought she was sick and had some ailment, but it turned out to be the most bizarre genetic abnormality. The queens of the past had mated with races from all throughout the solar system, but none of them had produced a child that looked like the other race. They have no recessive traits. Their offspring would get their silver hair and crystal blue eyes. They created clones that were almost perfect, so perfect that many scientists wondered if the queens secretly performed mitosis. But this theory was disproved when a certain dark moon spy disclosed that the queens had male consorts. Screams filled the room, and Serenity didn't even need to glance up to see that her father had definitely lost his temper, something her mother often lamented because of how erratic he could be at times. Jupiter and the Moon Princess looked up to see an angry earthly noble yelling, I challenge you to a duel, while pointing a finger at Ndu. Are you in agreement? Serenity groaned. Please don't let him kill anyone. Jadeite laughed at the servant before him. Who was the fool to come and hit him? A nobleman. The commander of the Far East and his companions were commenting on the Moon Princess's strange look, but they weren't being improper. It was a compliment, not a criticism. Damn right, I agree. Usagi's face was palmed, just her father. Wearily, the Moon Princess whispered, Papa, you don't have to do this. I simply overreacted. Naruto swung his katana back and forth, growling, I won't let anyone harm my precious people, no matter how it is done. People like those who judge others like that piss me off, he said, putting the sword back in its sheath and turning to face the door. I guess I am heading out, he said. He's one of the 4 sky generals of the Earth, Usagi explained. They say he's about as strong as Mars. Oh, honey, Naruto whispered, patting her head. He'd have to be much stronger than that to be a threat to me, my little bunny. Don't call me that, please, she said. You know I hate it when you do that. No one can hurt you when I can stop it, Naruto laughed. I know, honey, he said. No matter your age, you will always be my little girl. Do you have any plans? She asked, looking hopeful. I mean, other from killing him. I'm going to chop him up, Naruto declared, nodding. Smiling. Is it true that you haven't heard anything I said? Usagi frowned. He continued, saying, I love you too, honey. To which Usagi responded with a somewhat obscene cry of outrage. Everyone except the queen and Senshi watched in disbelief as Naruto suddenly moved and materialized behind the sky general, his katana sheathed, with multiple large gashes appearing and blood gushing from the wounds. Both nobles and civilians watched in wonder, with many thinking that the blonde might finally be knocked off his pedestal. I'm afraid that wasn't what just happened, but normally I would have played around and irritated you until you used your full power like I would have against many opponents, he remarked. He said, You insulted my daughter and my family line by implying that we were lesser beings. Well, Sky General, this freak easily defeated you without even trying. Let that be a lesson to you. To his surprise, the Sky General did not back down, so when Naruto got up, he pulled out his sword, deciding to only strike back whenever the stubborn Sky General chased after him. The medics should have rushed to the scene, but Jadeite went much beyond that. Claps began to fight back, and Naruto was playing with an earthly general when he got tired and created a fire dragon to chase the guy. You don't appear well, Sailor Uranus, Queen Serenity remarked. Do you require medical attention? Realizing that he probably could have killed her and Neptune if he had wanted to, the blonde replied. No, I will be fine, the male's antics are just so unusual. And began making strange movements, the Charleston, before constructing an earth dome to trap the general, and as the cheers echoed, he began making bows. What had begun as a duel had become a show. Why do you keep him around, my queen? Why not destroy him with an army? I'm not sure I understand. Uranus, do you not think I have not tried that? She said, turning to her most loyal servant. It was a very uncommon quality in the Moon Kingdom, to love one's child above oneself, she remarked. It didn't matter what I sent, assassins, soldiers, accidents, and calamities, he survived them all until I realized it was futile, because almost everything he does for the princess, he will die for her, he will fight our enemies for her, as long as we don't provoke him, he is no danger. The queen was aware that many people from the other planets, particularly those without senshi, loved their children more than themselves, but this was not the case in the inner planets, where dying was one of the greatest fears of an immortal society. They could always have another child, no problem, but dying was so final that people valued their life more than their children. Why must you be such a fool all the time? That night, Usagi let out a scream. A devilishly attractive man, Naruto said in closing. Really, father, I'm getting older and you don't have to save me all the time like you used to. As long as you're my child, which you always will be, I'm always going to come to your rescue, he said, kissing her forehead. Now, if you excuse me, Daddy has some friends to contact, he continued before heading out. Jadeite was vowing vengeance to the queen's consort, the man who had humiliated him, and the person who was currently a threat to the Dark Kingdom, but he was unable to come up with any ideas for how to defeat the boy without anyone noticing because it took a Senshi-level warrior to defeat someone of his caliber. A tall man in a gray suit asked, "Why have you called us here, Jadeite?" The man's silver hair was the same as Jadeite's, but it was longer and fell to his shoulders. "This better be significant,"